Good morning. It is 11 o'clock. I'm not on British, I am on British summertime. Hi everyone, I'm Guy. I'm one of the technical solution consultants at iPlicit. Thank you for joining us today. This morning I am delighted to be presenting the Charity Finance webinar with our very special guests. We've got the legendary Mark Salway, who's our charity finance expert, industry guru, who's going to be talking to us. And delighted to introduce Louise Zandstra, who's the Director of Finance at the Charleston Trust. Louise is going to be taking us through her digital transformation journey. So we've got some really exciting topics for today. Without any further ado, morning Mark, morning Louise.
Good morning, Guy. Nice to see everybody.
Good morning.
Thank you. Our topics for today, Mark is going to start off today. We've got 50 minutes, which will include some Q&A during and at the end of the session as well. So I'll talk about that in a second. Mark's going to cover his views on the current situation, navigating the complexity of reporting for non-profit organisations. Then Louise is going to talk to us about how the Charleston Trust has embraced digital finance transformation and her journey so far. And then I'm going to finish off with taking some of those themes that Mark and Louise will have discussed and talked about and showing how a modern finance system like iPlicit can help finance teams, or is helping finance teams across the country and around the world. And then we'll finish off with a little Q&A. Just some help and information. You'll find some handouts in the GoToMeeting webinar panel. We've got a case study from Louise. Mark and the team here at iPlicit put together a toolkit as well that you can download that's about how to select or choose or decide whether or not the time is right for you as an organisation to think about digital transformation, especially regarding finance as well. So you can take a copy of that. We've got another couple of case studies as well. So you're free to those handouts as well. A copy of the recording for today is going to be sent to everybody this afternoon by the marketing team here, and they will, so if you needed to rewatch it or if you wanted to share the session with anybody else in your organisation, then you're free to do so. That'll be sent out later on today. We have a questions panel in the GoToWebinar panel and a chat panel in the GoToWebinar panel. So if you want to type questions as we go through, we can answer those in the Q&A session. We've got a team here as well who'll be monitoring them, and they can answer questions as we go through. So if you just want to say hi, if you want to tell me, at the moment I'm in Brackley in Northamptonshire, and the weather here is grey and overcast. So you can start and tell me how the weather is and make me feel jealous, or especially if you are in other sunnier parts of the country. So you can use our chat to let me know how that is. But feel free to use that. Now, without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to Mark, and he's going to talk about the current operational world in which we live in. Over to you, Mark.
It's lovely to be introduced as a guru. I'm not really sure if I am. I just kind of have a take on the world and just waffle a lot. So I'm going to waffle a little bit about the current operational world we live in. I've just finished 2 courses, one for Age UK and one for Bayes Business School, on where we are in the world and what we see at the moment. And so it's been quite interesting. I think I can feed back something useful to you. I think the first thing really is complexity. What I'm seeing is just hugely increased complexity for all of us. And as I go through it, if people have got interesting things, pop it into the chat, because it makes it far more interesting, you know, or they agree with what I'm saying, great. If they don't agree, that's fine too. Let's just have a bit of a chat. So please say hi, please pop something into the chat. So yeah, complexity, back to complexity. I think that complexity has really increased for us. And I think cost of living has really taken that up a notch. I'm seeing a lot of contracts where cost of living hasn't been built in sufficiently, and people are having to start to renegotiate their contracts. I think that's been really difficult. But in the interim, they're having to use their reserves to get through that. So a lot of the Age UKs, for example, that I've been working with, they're saying, how can we use our reserves better? How can we use restricted reserves in different ways? How do we manage, for example, designated funds to see us through the cost of living, you know, crisis? Or if you've got no funds, how do you respond? So I think organizations, second bullet, are still trying to decide whether they're surviving or reimagining. But I think the culture of frugality has started to hit. We haven't invested in lots of new things. We haven't invested in infrastructure. We haven't invested in different things, but we've got some money to invest somewhere. And so I think that conversation is really critical at the moment. Back to complexity, where do we invest to have the biggest change for those we exist for? Is it in the infrastructure so we can do things properly with a sound base? Or is it in reimagining so we've got new things for the future? It's interesting. I'm going to say which is the biggest lever we can pull to make the biggest change. And so I think that good management information, the third bullet point, and decision making is really, really critical. And I think aligning our finances and our activities become even more important, because we need to see, in terms of our activities, are we creating impact? We need to see for our finances, are we covering our costs? And therefore, without actually being able to look at this crosshatch between finances and the impact that we have, we really can't make decisions. So that's where I think we are in terms of the operational world. Let's go to the next slide then. And on the first slide, I kind of alluded to good financial information as key. And I'm going to ask you at the end a question, so get ready on the chat function. And I do want people to put into chat, yeah? What do I think that good financial management information looks like? I think it's got to be relevant. In other words, meeting the audience's needs. I think it's got to be accurate enough. I don't think it has to be 100% accurate, but it has to be accurate enough to tell a picture. And there's a real tension here, isn't it? Because as finance staff, we want to make sure that everything is perfect, but actually sometimes we need to get information out on a timely basis instead of making it 100% accurate. I think so getting this balance right, we're going to come back and talk about that. It's called fast close methodology. We're going to come back and talk about it in a couple of slides. It provides explanation as well as data. It's forward looking. It has cash flows and not just your reserves and cash balances. It's easy to read and understand, getting your graphs, getting some decent narrative in there, and it arrives on a timely basis. So which one of these do I think is the most important? I think it's got to be forward looking. I've seen so much management information that's late and historic. It just doesn't allow to drive our cars forward and the headlights being on. So over to you. I need some in the chat, please. Why do you need financial management information? Okay, so let's just see what comes in the chat. Pop your answers in the chat. Why do you need financial management information? Let's pop it in the chat, please.
So we've got some questions, some answers coming in. So we need good financial information because it's easy to digest, considered as much as possible. Like this, and something that's not hundreds of pages.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody else?
We've got to help with decision making.
Oh, that's the one I wanted, to help with decision making. It was a trap. It was a trap. So Guy, onto the next slide. You know that QI annoying thing where it goes and flashes up. So if you can just go to the next slide.
We've got also more answers coming in. Transparency, good decisions, need information. There's some awesome answers coming in.
Yeah, and you can all read each other's chat's answers. That's lovely. But I regularly get told we need good decision. We need good management information for decision making. And the question then I ask is, well, what decisions are you trying to make? And 90% of the people that I ask, this is an informal piece of research, yeah, say we don't know. So if you're saying it's for decision making, but you don't know what decisions you're going to make, it's really critical you explore that with, the senior management team, with your trustees, whoever you're creating that management information for. So to have management information for decision making isn't enough. So a really simple example, if you've got an organization that's cash strapped and really struggling with cash flow, then you need to actually have good management information on cash and cash flow. Otherwise, you can't make decisions. Yeah. So really getting down to why you have your management information, I think, is really critical. And I'm sorry for being a little bit devious there, but it was a bit of a trick question. And I want to dig further into decision making. So let's go to the next slide then, Guy. I said it's about fast close. I said it's about getting information in a timely basis. It's interesting. I used to have back at Care and also at Cats Protection, people putting in their credit cards. And the credit cards would take probably, I don't know, 3 weeks to get in the system. But how much of the information was it? About 2%, yeah? So we didn't really need to put in the credit cards. We just needed to accrue. And then we had good enough information, but we wanted to get it 100% precise. Sometimes you just need information that's good enough. I'm going to ask you then the second chat question. This is not a trick here. How long does it take you to prepare your management information? And Guy, as the answers come in, if you could just read those back to me, that would be great. Okay, so the question is, how long does it take to prepare your management information after month end?
Yeah, we've got some answers coming in. They're ranging from 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, 8 days, a couple of weeks. Yeah, so we're talking weeks for most, I think, at the moment.
Yeah, so I think it's getting better, because it used to be about 4 weeks when I used to ask this question, 4 to 5 weeks. And the commercial sector is closing in 5 days. Yeah, in other words, they're getting a snapshot after the end of 5 days. So I'm heartened that actually we're getting down to shorter time periods, but we really should be aiming for 1 week. In other words, 5 working days, getting good enough information to make decisions out of that. And it's really interesting to hear we're now down to 2.5 weeks. That's much better, as I say, than 4 weeks when I used to ask that question before. Yeah. So next slide, if you can, Guy. Yeah, and so the question is, what are we providing and for whom, and what decisions need to be made? Well, I think the first thing is to get the audience something that they really want and something that they see themselves using. So trustees, the SMT, the departments, making sure they've got the information they need. And what do they need? Well, income and expenditure, that's critical. And also your budget and your variances against that. Balance sheet and reserves. Getting good information on like sort of debtors, creditors, if that's important to you, but also, you're restricted, you're unrestricted and designated. Cash flow, some department budgets and actuals where it's important. And I kind of think that a full management pack every quarter is important. People might disagree, and there's a lot of thought around this here, but I'd say a management pack every quarter, but absolutely every single month, a flash figure, just the top high level income and expenditure, and restricted and unrestricted. I find a lot of management information just bundles restricted and unrestricted together, and you really can't see then if you've got enough unrestricted, which is the lifeblood of your organization, to be healthy. Yeah, so breaking the reserves down into restricted and unrestricted and designated, absolutely critical for management information. So next slide, please. And I like to see some numbers. I like to see not just the finances, but also what drives the finances, i.e. the KPIs. So for example, if it's the number of people you're helping, or the number of children you're training, for example, or teaching, that has to go against the money. Otherwise you can't see if you're spending the right amount, or too little or too much. Management accounts need to allow you to manage your business and to take decisions. And we need different tools for different audiences. That's what I really believe. So we've got a great case study coming up in Louise. So final slide that I've got, and then we'll hand over. I think making finance change is a mix of people, process, and technology. And you're going to hear from Louise. I mean, she's really gone on the people, change front, and she's empowered people by helping them to improve processes using digital, and then getting implicit in as technology to help. She'll tell her own story, but it's been a profound change for the organization. Yeah, so for the Charleston Trust. So if you go to the next slide, then let me just introduce Louise. And Louise, pop on your camera, and we'll do a handover where I pop my camera off. I mean, Louise, the Charleston Trust is an amazing place. I used to be the auditor, and so actually seeing the Bloomsbury set and the art that they created, and also the diversity of feelings it brings into those that really engage with the house, and also the grounds and the other things you do, and the art is amazing. You're the Director of Finance and Resources. Wow, you are just so listenable to. I really, really love the story you've got to tell. And we've done a little case study so that if you want to go and you want to find a little bit more, you can. And Louise, I'm just really looking forward to hearing what you've got to say. So I'm going to pass over to you.
Thank you so much, Mark. I thought not everybody might know what Charleston is and where we are. So the Charleston Trust, we are in East Sussex, in the middle of the Sussex Downs. The Charleston was the home of British artists Vanessa Bell and Duncan Grant, who were part of the Bloomsbury set. So we are an artist house museum, but today we also run 2 galleries with temporary exhibitions. We have a cafe, we have retail, and we put on festivals and events. So we have a year-round programme of different types of activity, and essentially we're an arts centre today with lots of different activities. Could I have the next slide, please, Guy? So I joined Charleston in 2020, right at the beginning of the first COVID lockdown, which was a very odd time to join any organisation. And obviously it was a time of huge change for the organisation as well. So when I came in, we'd had a very traditional finance setup. So finance team always in the office. We were working with Sage Line 50 that had been in place since 2010. And what happens, I think, in small arts organisations is you don't lightly make a decision to change a finance system. You tend to make it work. It grows over time, and finding the budget to make those changes is always challenging. So with Sage Line 50, I think we were using a very, very flat chart of accounts. So we had no analysis level. So we weren't really using departments which are available in Sage, but we also weren't able to track things like restricted funds very easily. Every time we had a new project or a new activity, we added another 30 nominal ledger codes, and I'm sure that's not something that just happens to us. So Sage had become very, very cluttered and unwieldy, hundreds of codes saying do not use, and things like that. And I think processes get set up by somebody, that person leaves, the processes sort of carry on and they get evolved over time, but it's very difficult to step back once you're sort of in it, to step back and think about what do we actually need now as an organisation where we are now. Or our organisation had changed a lot from being only open part of the year to being a year-round organisation with more activities. I think the other point is that arts organisations and most non-profit organisations are complex. We have restricted fund accounting, we're reporting to funders on different types of grants, we're dealing with cultural exemption for VAT, we also have capital goods scheme VAT. We have a charity and a trading company, so we're consolidating results. We are produce a group VAT return. We are claiming museums and galleries tax relief. So we're using our financial information for a lot of different activities and needs, and everything that we produced from Sage was quite manual. And inevitably, I think, in all organisations, too many spreadsheets and processes outside of the finance system. So all of our VAT, for example, we would extract data from Sage, but we would have to do a lot of work on spreadsheets to produce the return, and then essentially consolidate into and journal back into the system. So there's a lot of processes that happen outside the system which are time consuming, which means that by the time you're putting information into the system, it's 2-3 weeks after month end, and your finance system is never really fully up to date. You're always having to refer back to other systems in order to understand what's going on in your business and the sort of key income and expenditure streams that make up your activity. Next slide, please. So we were really excited that we secured funding to allow us to implement a new finance system. And I think the key things that that I wanted to achieve as finance director, but also that the organisation really needed, were the things listed here. So for me, improved functionality, capturing data once, so taking data from one system straight into another system, and whether that's through an API where you're sort of uploading the data with minimal intervention, or whether it's just kind of taking the information and doing the reconciliation work within the finance system. So you've got the daily data and you can see how it's mapped into the system and what you're doing with it, and that all the work is happening within the finance system. You're not duplicating that work by having it on a spreadsheet then in the finance system. Of course, we wanted to make it easier to share information with budget holders. I think everybody will be used to budget holders' constant questions. Have I spent my budget? How much is left against this budget line? Has this invoice been paid yet? And we were also, prior to our change, our purchase order system, for example, wasn't integrated with the finance system. So we had no visibility of what the level of budget holder commitment was, which can mean that it looks in the finance system that everything's fine, but actually they've completely committed their budget for this event or for this part of the financial year. I think True Cloud is really, really important now. So prior to COVID, everybody worked in the office at Charleston. There were very few people who worked remotely. We had a server on site. It was possible to work remotely with a VPN, but it wasn't a particularly robust system. As part of our digital transformation, we've now moved to SharePoint. Most people are not in the office most days of the week. So the finance team, we're all in the office together one day a week, but we work remotely. Sometimes we're in, sometimes we're not. The same with other budget holders. So we wanted a cloud system that could be accessed as easily from the office as from home, but also the additional functionality of things like an app to make it really easy for budget holders to approve their invoices and to view data. And obviously the other thing that came out of COVID was paperless. Some organisations had moved to paperless pre-COVID, and my previous organisation was like that. At Charleston, we were still very heavily paper-based. So when I arrived, we would print out PDF invoices, physically sign them, put them in a physical folder which lived in the finance office, which of course means you can't look at it when you're not in the finance office. And so we'd evolved through COVID a kind of slightly clunky system that involved emailing invoices around with Adobe Sign. But what we wanted was something that we could have as much information as possible in the system, and that budget holders in particular could refer back to information that was stored centrally. And obviously that makes it easier when you come to a remote audit, and you can share information with the auditors that way as well. Next slide, please, Guy. So I'm really pleased that all of the functionality that I've just talked about, we were able to deliver when we moved to iPlicit. But I think there are some things that I particularly wanted to draw out that have made a real difference. So for us, one of the key things that we've really value about iPlicit has been the approval workflows. So our approval workflows are not particularly complicated. Budget holders can sign off up to a certain level. Above that level, it comes to a director level role, one or the other, depending on the department. Above that level, it needs 2 directors to sign, and there's a further level that goes to trustees. And that's been completely automated in the system. So the system will email the approval to the budget holder. Once they've approved it, it understands where it needs to go next. If it needs a third level of approval, that's in the system as well. And most importantly, the evidence of that process is also logged in the system. So the log for the individual invoice or process shows the different levels of approval, and also shows if it was sent back for a reason. It's on the wrong code. It needs to be a different cost centre, there's a problem with the VAT. All of those steps in the process are visible, and we can easily share that information with our auditors. Integrated purchase ordering has been a really big thing for us in terms of improved visibility of commitments. So we didn't have that set up in Sage. Purchase ordering was happening separately with a sort of spreadsheet based system, and we had the kind of typical problem that you get in small organizations where people would wait until they got the invoice, then do the purchase order, then send it to us, at which point it's like, well, why did why did we have to go through that process and sign this document off twice? So having that visibility of commitments is really important to the finance team, particularly at the moment. It's a challenging financial time. VAT returns, I think this has been a huge difference in the way that we do things, and actually one of the things that has taken a little while for us to get our heads around. So the sort of functionality around irrecoverable VAT is set up in the system, so that when an invoice is posted, the irrecoverable VAT element is posted straight to the expense code as a cost. So what that means is the budget holders can immediately see the impact of the irrecoverable VAT on their costs, whereas in Sage it was something that was journaled in after the quarter end. You couldn't see it as sort of relating to an individual invoice. The VAT returns are calculated on a consolidated basis, so both companies are processed at the same time, and the system generates the journal that's posted to the system. So in terms of making tax digital, all of that information is linked to the VAT submission, and we're able to see, as soon as the VAT return's done, all of the postings are completed. And that's been incredibly useful and has made what was a very, very time-consuming process much more straightforward. We're making a lot of use of reconciliations within the system. So where we had spreadsheets that kind of reconciled all of our shop tills to cash coming in, we've now got rid of those. So actually we are seeing time savings, particularly at our finance assistant level, and we're starting, it's a journey, we're starting to reduce the number of external spreadsheets that we have. And finally, consolidation, management reporting. So being able to see the two companies in the system side by side, and particularly, I think my favourite, as somebody who's very immersed in the management accountings, the ability to change the view instantly. So I can look at our results by department, by project, by fund type, and then I can look at them by fund type, then department, or fund type, then period, if I want to look month by month, and I can drop that information straight into Excel. So these are things that have had a really significant impact on the time that it's taken me to produce information, but also in terms of the wider team as well. The time that it takes for them to sort of see where they're at. Approvals was quite a time-consuming, slow process. The system sends the emails out, and it sends a reminder to those people who don't always get their approvals back to you as quickly as you'd hope. Next slide, please, Skye. So I think it's really important to say we're still at the beginning of a digital transformation journey, and I don't know if anybody ever finishes that journey. I think you're always moving. I think that what's been really important for us is we've been able to secure funding to help us to update systems. So we've updated our finance system. We've recently replaced the EPOS system in our shop. We'd previously replaced ticketing and CRM. So we've created these new systems, but that really is the very first step in the journey. The next step is how we make better use of them, and make use of the information that we have. So I think it's really, really important that we're able to give budget holders and managers access to real-time financial information and access to the information from the other systems as well. So thinking back to what Mark was saying before in terms of KPIs, I can pull data out of our EPOS system in terms of average transaction value in our shop, number of transactions that we have in a day. In terms of ticketing, obviously visitor numbers are crucial for us. So we're joining those systems up to produce monthly KPI dashboards. How are we doing? Those sort of day-to-day numbers are the real early warning systems for us. Visitors are not where they need to be. Bookings are not where they need to be. Retail spend per head is up, retail spend per head is down. Those are the really, the key statistics that I'm looking at on a weekly basis at the moment. Having that information and ability to access that information shared with the wider team, I think has been really, really important as well. Improving their literacy of using the systems, building skills within the team is crucial. It's no good having these new systems if the people that you're working with can't access them, or one person is an absolute whiz at those systems, they leave, and actually that knowledge is lost and the ability to extract those data is lost. I think how we share the data with the wider team and board now is really important. So making use of KPI reports. Our accounts pack that went to the board previously was very, very detailed. And so you'd get board members wanting to know why your stationery budget is £500 over budget. Actually, what they need to be seeing is a much more top level position, with an emphasis on the restricted funds position, the unrestricted funds position, but they don't necessarily need to be down in the detail of individual expense codes. Whereas for budget holders, I think they need a quick snapshot. How is this project doing for us? How is the festival doing in terms of its expense budget, particularly at a time when budgets are stretched, resources are tight. Every decision that we make to invest in one activity over another has to be backed up with a good reason why we're doing that. And I think finally, the most important thing for the next steps of our journey is asking ourselves lots of questions about how we're doing, but using our data to support the answers. So we've invested in the systems, now we have to make them work hard to deliver what we need as a business. And that's everything for me, but there's more information about in our case study about the changes that we made. I hope that's useful. Thank you.
Thank you, Louise. That's brilliant. So at this point, we're going to ask, are there any questions for Mark and Louise? And Mark, you were going to talk about our toolkit as well, weren't you? You're just on mute.
Yeah, I suddenly realised I was on mute. I'm sorry, Guy. Yeah, I was, because what I felt was that speaking to people like Louise, there was so much knowledge, and people speaking to people that implement all the time, like Guy. There was a need to put it all into one document. So we've created a toolkit. It's got lots of checklists. So in other words, you can go down the checklist, you can start to understand what a difference a new system might make, or asking the question, when is it time to change? You can look at how do you actually start to choose the right system, and then how do we implement well. And then, as Louise has just said, how do we continue to drive our investment, because it doesn't stop at the end of just implementing the system. So for me, the toolkit is actually quite pithy. Lots and lots of checklists. It's only about 20 pages long. It's quite concise, but it will help you and the trustees and everybody to think about those 4 questions. And it's in the handout, so you can actually grab hold of it and download it as well. So Guy, we've got a couple of minutes for questions, but then we really do want to have a look at the system as well. So quick questions. Any questions for Louise or myself?
Yeah, we've got some questions coming through. How long did it take Louise to implement the new software from placing the order to go live?
So we took about 3 months, and that obviously wasn't solid. So we started training beginning of June. We went live 1st of October. So that's a relatively quieter time of year for us. And the process felt quite smooth. I mean, we went live on the 1st of October. We processed some invoices, we paid some bills. We didn't end up with a significant downtime.
Okay, excellent. And one more for the time being. Do you have any thoughts on the transition for non-finance teams? So, for example, the fundraising teams or the other teams in the organisation. How does the transition go for them?
For us, it worked quite well. So we, one of the reasons that we wanted to take 3 months was so that we had time to make sure that we brought other parts of the organisation on the journey with us. So we focused initially on training people on things like purchase orders, approving purchase invoices, all of the cost side of things. But yeah, we worked really closely with fundraising teams, and I think I think the best thing that I can say is it went smoothly and nobody had a problem. It wasn't one of those situations where people were immediately like, oh, I really miss Sage, which has been very positive.
That's lovely to hear. Okay, right. I think we're going to move on to the demonstration. I'm going to show a bit of software now. So that's a really tough double act to follow. But thank you, Mark and Louise. And we'll finish off. If you've got further questions for Mark and Louise, we'll finish off today with a short Q&A session as well. I just wanted to follow on from, it's a tough double act to follow, that is, to go through and just take a view of some of the areas that Louise and Mark have talked about today. From an implicit or a software point of view. But before I show you some software, I thought about this in the shower yesterday. And I was trying to think how to describe the best ways from how we view the financial data within a finance system and how we've built implicit. Kind of your income and expenditure needs to be stored in different ways. We need to analyze that in different dimensions. And the best way I could think of describing it was to have it in different blocks. So and I was going to go down into the lounge and put the camera in and show the kids Lego, but we don't have time for that. So I did it in a spreadsheet. And so you need to analyze out your income so you can get that management reports, you can get that live information out to people without the finance team having to at month end or during the month being able to take that data and to stick it into spreadsheets and to analyze that out. And you might need to analyze out that income and expenditure in different ways across the organization. And we find that, especially speaking to prospective customers as well, is that the current systems they've got, they might only have two colours to be able to analyse information out, 2 tracking codes or two cost centres or a cost centre in the department, that type of thing. So when we were building implicit, we wanted to take away that restriction. Because we want to be able to capture that information once, whether it's income or expenditure across the organisation. We want to then be able to slice and dice that data up in lots of different ways, and without having restrictions, but also not just for today, but also to future-proof the organisation as you move forward as well. So to be able to take that data, because we don't know where we're going to be in 5 years' time. We don't know, is 6 levels of analysis right for us today? What happens if we need a 7th in 3 years' time? What happens if we grow as an organisation, acquire different entities in the organisation, that type of thing? So we wanted to do away with all of that with implicit. How we managed to do that, now I'll show you some software. Here's my nominal accounts. In our I'm just going to show you one of my income codes. Against my income code, the way we built implicit is to have unlimited dimensions, we call them. because you might need to analyse this bit of income in certain ways, especially for our non-profit organisations. We might need a department, a cost centre, a fund, definitely. So I can get your fund analysis out. We can ring fence information. But the way with our unlimited dimensions, it means that today maybe I wanted to analyse information around countries or continents or fund types or income types, or this type of income might be coming from my shop, so I need to analyse it even by a till that it's coming from. We've got projects, we've got events. So with our unlimited dimensions, it means that we can analyse that information out across maybe this particular set of nominal account codes. I don't need to do that for everything. Our stationary costs just need to be maybe the entity, the cost centre, the department that goes against. So having that flexibility means that we can capture information at source, and that could be capturing from a purchase order that's being sent through our approval system that's all inbuilt within IPlicit. That then allows me to analyse the information, but it also means that the rest of the organisation outside of the finance team can get to information with the analysis that they need in real time, because we're all cloud-based. It's accessible from a browser on any device, and having that information means I can take my income and expenditure account, and we might have different entities, different companies within an organisation, especially with our non-profit organisations like Louise's. We'll have a trading arm, or we'll have a charity. We might have multiple trading arms. We might have multiple charities in the organisation. The way that we built IPlicit is all of those companies, all of those entities sit within the one IPlicit system, and then I can slice and dice that data. Maybe I wanted to look at that information by an accounting year and an accounting period. Maybe I wanted to see that. And you're thinking, Guy, well, a chart of accounts looks like a trading chart of accounts, and we're a non-profit organisation. We've tried to think of that as well. So we can have that chart of accounts in different formats. So I can then shape that chart of accounts. We might have a different set of requirements from a compliance point of view. I need to shape that chart of accounts into a different view. I need to shape that chart of accounts at year end into our SORP related or SOFA related statutory chart of accounts when the auditors come in. Having the flexibility to do that within the system, we might have department heads who need to look at information in a certain way, but they don't need to look at the entire chart of accounts either. I want to just give them a view of their areas of the nominal ledger that's important to them. Then we've got all of those Lego blocks. We need those Lego blocks to then go and take that information. And all Lego blocks in IPlicit, those dimensions when we're tracking transactions, means that even an entity, so I've got live consolidation across the organisation, our trading arm, our charity, our different funding, our events organisation, all within one place. So the finance team, the trustees, the management team have live access to information, and we've tried to build automation in IPlicit as well. So we want to take that month-end close, we're making it our mission. We want to eliminate, we're not going to eliminate month-end ever, but we want to eliminate the amount of time and resources that a finance team and the rest of the organisation have to put into month end. So we've built an entire automation centre, and our automation centre will allow IPlicit to take up that strain. It will work out what your accruals are automatically from our purchase orders that we've got within the system. It will work out your accruals for you if you wanted to. We just want to see the invoices that have been put into IPlicit but haven't yet been electronically authorised. And I want to make a commitment for that as well at month end. I want to speed up those processes. We want to do automatic capitalisation of fixed assets. We want to do automatic depreciation and amortisation. Your deferred income, which is one of my favourite topics, we want to do away with all the spreadsheets to manage that deferred income, the event income we've got coming in that needs to be recognised in 6 months' time. IPlicit can take all of that information, and it might be being fed in from our CRM systems through our API. So connectivity with a cloud-based system is really important to us. Our deferred income automation will automatically defer it and release that income over set times and periods and things like that, so I can deal with subscriptions, donations, events. We also include all of that automation around our intercompany transactions. So IPlicit has been designed to manage and understand those automatic postings. So IPlicit will create a sales invoice in company A, creates a purchase invoice in company B. When we submit our VAT returns for the group, IPlicit's automation will take that VAT return, not only post and submit that VAT return to HMRC, but it will also retrieve the acknowledgement back that that's been accepted or rejected. We'll consolidate that information across the group, handle your partial exemptions, and do all of the intercompany transactions and postings for you as part of just that submission. So the automation center is really designed to try and free up the finance team from those day-to-day tasks. With that in mind, then iPlicit can also do things like take out all of my elimination transactions. So all those intercompany transactions can go out. We need to post an invoice once, I can post it across multiple entities in the group. And then being able to slice and dice that data up in different ways then comes into the pivot tables, basically, that we've built into iPlicit. So all those different Lego blocks, all those different dimensions, maybe I wanted to say to iPlicit, that's great, but I wanted to see the information by a cost center or a project or a department. So I can then go and slice and dice that up to get me the reporting and analysis, with the ability for anyone who's viewing that information to drill down into the transactions, to maybe see the purchase invoice that's been scanned in and attached to the document, to understand that that document's been paid, to be able to choose that allocation. So we've got a lot more self-service than a finance system that's locked up just for the use of the finance team, because the information we want to unlock and share across the organisation. I am running out of time, but coming on to the slice and dicing of data, let me just show you. Here's some I prepared earlier, and this one is I particularly like, because this one, go on.
I was asked by Guy to be the timekeeper, and 45 to jump on and say, we're heading towards the end of the demo. I just really thrilled that Guy has got so much to show, and also the energy is amazing. You know, what I would say is that the workflows that sit behind iPlicit are really good to give you automation, to give you sign-off rules, to make sure that that all sits within the system. It's really good. People can get the information that they need. And then the final thing is it all downloads into Excel, so that, you know, actually you can interface between the two and get some really powerful management information out. Guy,
live integration
is 3 minutes left, sir. Yeah.
We have, and we have a stack of questions come through as well. So I'm just going to flash up the slides again. Bear with me, and then we'll try and get to we'll get to our next steps and to our slides. If I can just get PowerPoint to.
Now, we respect people.
I'm supposed to be technical solution consultant.
Sorry, forgive me. We respect people's time. So at 11:50, we will finish. But if we happen to stay on for another couple of minutes just to finish answering some of the questions, if anybody needs to stay, they can, yeah, because I appreciate we've got through that fairly rapidly.
We have got lots of questions come through as well. So, but we will technically finish it.
Well, why don't we wrap up now, and then we'll stay for questions. So the wrap up for me is just thank you. I think, Louise, you've been exceptional in terms of expressing and explaining in the most engaging way. It's been lovely to hear the story of the Charleston Trust and what you've achieved, and the fact that you're just on the start of that journey as well. I love that honesty. So thank you, Louise. Yeah, Guy, thank you for showing us the system very, very briefly. It's worth having another look properly. I mean, if you want to grab hold of Guy, you know, request a call back, please do. And you know, with 1 minute left, just thank you very much indeed for taking us through and for this morning. Yeah. So Guy, I'm going to pass you back to the leader today, and just to make sure that people don't feel obliged to stay, but we will stay for answering questions.
Yeah, we'll stay to answer a couple of questions. Thank you everyone for attending, and bear in mind we have the handouts as well. So Louise's case study, which is a brilliant read, really insightful, and thank you, Louise and Mark, obviously, for all your time today. I've really enjoyed today. I think it's been brilliant. And feel free to get in touch with us. You can find more information out on iPlicit.com. But thank you all very much. And we're going to stay on for a couple more minutes if anyone wants to listen to us talk about questions that we've been asked, because we've had loads. So I'm just going to dive straight in. What have we got? We've had some questions in. Management information time, how this has shown significant change. I think that question is how is that management information been able to show significant change? I know from my experience, it's been, from the customer feedback that I've had, is having more live information and accessible from in and out of the office, especially after COVID as well. That seems to make a bit of a difference. Louise and Mark?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say that I've worked with a number of organizations that really couldn't see in real time where they are with projects and their burn rates, Guy and Louise. So in other words, I work in a very project-based environment. Cost recovery, therefore, is key. In other words, the fee that you get from the spend that you're incurring. And what I've seen is people suddenly being able to see and being able to plan across the different projects to see what they've got coming in the future in terms of their cost recovery. It's made a huge difference to organisations that I've worked with. So Health Poverty Action, for example, another client that's implemented, iPlicit, has really been able to see in real time this cost recovery and these fees coming in against the spend that they've got. In other words, you can manage burn rates and see if you're actually spending against your project activity. I mean, Louise?
I think similarly. I mean, we've been looking at ways that we can simplify our processes, as I said, so getting rid of those really complex spreadsheets where data is moved from one sheet to another before it hits the finance system, so that we can actually produce information much faster, and making better use of the data that's in the other systems as well. So our ticketing numbers, donation income, having a sense of how those key metrics for us are performing on a day-to-day basis has been really, really important, especially at the moment when, with inflation and things like that, project costs can rise very, very rapidly.
Yeah, I think I totally agree. Another question comes through. What do we do? How do we manage forecasting and budgeting? So that was we have inbuilt budgeting and forecasting areas within iPlicit, so we can manually key information in there, can have it automatically uploaded from previous years, add 10% to it, that type of thing. And we can also download it, a template into Excel, and then upload from Excel into iPlicit, and then have inquiries, we call them, in iPlicit, so comparing this year's or this month's or this year to date or whatever, whether I want a rolling budget or whether I want analysis, budget versus actuals, that type of thing, all within the screens within iPlicit. But again, that extends out to the self-service, and we also we can also shape it into graphical representations as well. So there's on-screen charts and bar charts and pie charts and stuff like that. So people can, if people aren't for the non-accountants in the organisation, if they like to look at things in a more graphical representation, then they can do that. And they can also do that on their mobile devices as well. That was that one. So I think, because it's now 5 to 11, I'm going to call a close today. And all I can do is thank Louise and Mark so much for joining us today, and everyone else who's been watching. And go to iPlicit.com. We do these webinars 2 or 3 every month, so you can go to the resources area of the website and check out the next one as well. But thank you for your time today. Hope you found that enjoyable and interesting, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks again, Mark. Thanks, Louise.
Thank you.
Thanks, Guy.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.